September 21st, and we are dealing with subjective criteria for the gray area for Untitled promotions. All those things we don't tell our students about that we use very subtly to determine whether or not they're ready for black belt. Okay. And these are all pretty, what do you say, judgmental things. We all have different criteria, but when we were first starting about what makes a black belt, we got into subjective criteria very superficially, but I was able to make a list, and there's a lot of commonality. Everybody saying, yeah, these are the criteria, even though we don't tell our students about them. And so in any case, last time we dealt with maturity and philosophy and the code of conduct, and so this and one thing I want to mention to you is if I do get these Zoom topics out, but if any of you would like to move any of these around, you think they're more important to you, I can move them up. This is not set in stone, so keep that in mind. Anyway, okay, subjective criteria: setting a positive humble example. Does the student do this? And there's a note here: Bushido without a spirit of humility is simply violence. Is there any validity to that? So if we're saying we're looking at the student being an example of, positivity or humbleness, what are we looking at? What are we trying to see from this brown belt?
Character development.
Okay, character. Okay, what I'd like to get away from is, and I'm not picking on you, Kristen, I'd like it away from, we need to be specific here because we're trying to answer questions, not create more questions. It's like you asking someone, is the earth flat? And the person responds, is it? So anyway, so what do we mean by person has a positive, or they provide a positive or humble example to the other students? Or does anybody do we not want to touch this one?
If I may, this is really a important area, I believe, and we could spend quite a bit of time on that. Respect, for me, it all begins and ends with respect, and there's many of the old masters, both in jujitsu and karate or kempo, that express the same idea. Everything begins and ends with respect, and I would think we'd be able to watch the amount of respect a person have even before we bring him into the dojo. We see an individual and he seems to be respectful and kind and courteous, a nice person, and he's respectful, and we watch him and say, maybe this person would fit into what we're trying to do here. So we have a glimpse, and you don't know everything about a person when you first meet them, but if you watch them over time, or if you work with them, you can see habits, and then that's kind of a starting point. And then I think as that person progresses, is he still keeping those virtues or those attributes, and is he developing beyond that, especially in the way he treats others? This really jumps right out at me, because I have a student who trains in another dojo also, and he says he's 86 years old, and he's very good. He's of course at 86. he doesn't have quite the stamina he had before, but he's better at some things than he was before too. And so I guess where I'm going with that is that this idea of respect is a deep one, and you should know something about that from the beginning before you bring them in. And then we watch them carefully as they progress through and see a pattern and see if those attributes are developing of respect, humility, kindness, servitude, actually wanting to help somebody, rather than just, and I saw somewhere in here, are we trying to just, I know this is going off track a little bit maybe, but are we trying to develop a fighter or a martial artist? Yeah, I mean, I think on the street, I don't want it to get to a fight. I want to end it. And so if that helps to get the ball rolling, I'll be quiet a minute.
Okay, any other thoughts here on
Well,
humility and being a positive example?
I'm going to throw a boulder. I'm going to throw a boulder into the pond and toss out one of my favorite notions, and that's the notion of enthusiasm. Greek word entheos, God within. The enthusiastic student, man, that is contagious. It's like a smile. You get those around you to smile when you're laughing and smiling, and that doesn't mean you're not serious about learning, but the enthusiasm that exudes is electric for a class. And it comes from the sensei, that's one thing. When it comes from fellow students, it's even better.
Yes, because as a sensei, oh, I finally hit pay dirt. Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, as a sensei, to see the students pick up the ball and run with it is probably one of the most satisfying things I know as a teacher and as a sensei. It's just, that really makes me happy. I got to someone, they got the concept, they understand, and they don't have to say anything, they just do. And to me, that's they're setting a positive and humble example for others, because you don't have to say, I got this. Other students can see in the look of this person's face or whatever, or how they're behaving in class, that they do get whatever you're trying to get across to them. And
Yeah. James, I wholeheartedly agree with your concepts and what you're discussing with respect. I particularly like your use of the word servitude. That's wonderful. And you find a student who's got that, who's imbued with that, they will take the ball and run with it because they have a community-minded, giving heart. I wrote that word down and circled it. Thank you, James.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so yeah, servitude is, if they're willing to help others, to me, that's a real, and helping doesn't mean just telling them what to do. It means, let me be your uke, and work you through this, rather than just stepping and saying, you're doing it wrong, here's the right way to do it, and telling them and going back and sitting down or whatever else you were doing. Because helping others is an important indication that it's a positive characteristic for a person who's a black belt.
George, at the beginning, you said if any of you thought we should move things around, and maybe this is appropriate, because down below you've got under ethics, is the goal to be an effective fighter or a martial artist? James hit on the same thing. Dave agreed with it. And I was thinking along those lines too, that if we're going to talk about positive and humble, then we're also making the distinction between effective fighter and martial artist, even though you next step is define the terms.
Right.
But the things that we keep talking about are the ones that we put in the martial artist category, as opposed to the effective fighter category.
Okay, where I know it's in here someplace. I just can't.
It's 12B
Well,
in your outline.
If I may jump in here for a moment on this topic, and thank you for going there, Tom. I look at martial artists and I say the primary function in developing a martial artist is to build character. And you want to compare that to being an effective fighter? I put that in a different class, or I don't know if it's a different class, but I call it self-defense, because self-defense is a much more inclusive concept in my thinking than martial artist. And the burr in my shoe, the bee in my bonnet with martial arts is that the reason so many of us have more than one black belt or have studied with more than one sensei is that martial arts tend to have things we don't do. Boxers don't kick, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the ground grapple, they don't punch when they do that. And so it's like, well, we don't do that here. Okay, those are restrictions, and those restrictions become students' restrictions. Self-defense is more wide open to the possibilities. Kempo karate is a very broad form of karate that includes grappling and throws and hey, Japanese jiu-jitsu, the expression that's all jiu-jitsu. But you want to build an effective fighter, I say focus on the concept of self-defense and bring in everything that's allowable by law into your curriculum.
okay.
Tommy, no, I agree with him. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm still looking this. I'm still
I
looking
want to
at.
thank y'all for listening, because I feel better getting it off my chest. Now I can shut up for the rest of the meeting.
I'm totally confused.
Oh, heck.
Okay. No,
There's also the way you gain respect, the way of gaining respect. What is your style of gaining respect? Is it being a good teacher and having good knowledge, or being harsh to people? I myself found Budoshin because I didn't like the way I saw some black belts gaining respect, and I didn't want my own children to learn a style that way, that they gained respect. So I decided when I got children to open my own dojo, and when I have found Budoshin Jiu-Jitsu, I saw that was the right. I think they had all the right honor and the right way of thinking for teaching my own children, and that was also the way I wanted to teach other people. That's why I started to learn from Budoshin books and material to learn. I think the spirit is good and the values are right.
okay, where I am. Okay, where are we going here?
Okay, it was having a black belt. I think how to teach having a black belt, and I wanted to teach my children to have a black belt, and I wanted them to learn the right way, in an honorable way, and it should have the right values as a black belt. That was what I kind of meant.
Okay.
And that's why I choose Budoshin, and being an honorable black belt the right way, not the guy who gains respect by diminishing others, but by learning and teaching, and then having the right values.
Okay. Well, I think that's what we're striving for, is to have people, the black belts, with good character. They respect themselves. They respect. Are you getting
Echo.
feedback? feedback
Yes.
for me?
Yes. Yep.
Me?
A little bit,
What's causing this? Anyway,
but uh, I'm sorry, George, I was gonna just interject something, but excuse me, I'm sorry.
okay, I think what we're trying to do here is okay, this candidate is a person of character. They're willing to help others. They are willing to set a positive example for others. They're humble to the extent that they don't bring attention to themselves unnecessarily. See what I did. They help others. They've called it, servitude. And so we have a lot of things going here. And we kind of hit upon being respectable, the issue of respect. And if we're dealing with respect, is there a difference between if you're in a dojo situation, do you want your students to feel, or let me put it this way, is there an atmosphere of mutual respect or of subservience?
Wow.
And that's there's a difference there because and I've seen this also with parents, and I've seen it a lot with I hate to say it, school teachers too. Don't argue with me, do as I say, my word is the last word. I used to believe that at some point I stopped believing that last phrase. Because I know a couple times as a teacher, there were times where I say, when I first started teaching, a principal usually had the last word in a school. And then the systems changed. And by the time I retired and I'd been a union rep, et cetera, there were a couple times, and I didn't do it as a union rep, where I actually threatened to go over the principal's head. I threatened that very tactfully, and ultimately I got the information I wanted. I still had to do what they wanted me to do, but we ended up with a better understanding of each other. And I don't like going over people's heads. But so the question is, do you want your students to be subservient, or do you want a sense of mutual respect to exist in the dojo? Because that's what I've seen some dojo where, if you disagree with the sensei, I mean, that's the way Seki was to some extent until you got to know him. If you disagreed with him, he'd say, "There's the door."
It's quite a good subject that you're talking about there, George. And if I may, it's hitting close to heart. That's why I'm opening my mouth and jumping in, is that the way the teacher is, and if you want to belong to that group, the student is going to develop in the same character as the teacher. And if that teacher is harsh, if he's not doing the right things, that's what they're going to learn, and they're going to carry it forward. It's just like raising a child. If this parents are abusive here, they're going to teach the child to be abusive. He grows up to be abusive. At some point in time, somebody in that lineage stops and says, "No, we're not going to do it that way." And I think it's the very same thing in martial arts. This is so close to my heart because, and I'll just make it brief. I saw this firsthand in my first school. Great practitioners, basically problems along that line. And you can't expect your students to be different than that. However, if they have a teacher who embraces these other qualities, then he'll grow that way. And I can't express it enough. Thomas and I were discussing it the other night. With one of the other students we have who came from that same school. And the lack of courtesies towards him, you know, at his age and at his health, were very sad. And it shouldn't be happening, but that's what they do. That's what they do. And so I think that it is a very important piece of the conversation, I would say.
Any other thoughts on this?
I'll add something. I prefer the respect, but I think you need some level of blind obedience when students first start, particularly older ones. And I'm thinking particularly of just getting somebody in their 40s to be able to roll or take a fall, and you've got to say, you can do this, do it this way, and you can do this. And I say, they've got to have some blind trust in you in order to get it to work or get past that. But that's going to grow into respect as opposed to blind obedience. I think we start off with obedience when a student begins, but then it's got to grow into respect because they trust you.
I agree. Right. Agree with you, Thomas.
That's a good topic.
Which one?
Trust in your sensei. Because that's the key. That's
Yeah.
the key to learning for a lot of students in any situation is if you trust the person and you trust them to be competent and you trust them to be looking out for your self-interest, you're more inclined to take that risk.
Yep.
I think that occurs in any environment. So we'll have to hit that one up. Add that on. Okay. We have here the need to a person who is going for candidate. You want to see that they have a need to excel. They want to go beyond what is normally expected of them. Is that good, bad, indifferent, or? And I think we've touched on it to some extent already.
Well, what depends on what you mean by excel. Is there a definition where if you do it exactly this way, then you've mastered it? Or is it, I'm never going to be able to master it. I have to continue to be able to improve. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all seek it. We all, if we are a serious sensei, we all seek continuous improvement. I think as human beings, if we have some sort of positive value system, we always seek, I would think, self-improvement to be able to do things better. So maybe that's the need to excel is what I look for is, do they have a desire to improve? Rather than excel being going beyond what is normally expected of a person. I mean, and that's a different definition of excel. They want to be better than anyone else, or is it? Do they have a consistent desire to improve themselves as a person, which then allows them to do a better job of whatever they're doing, hopefully. So which one do we want to pick, or do we want to accept them both, or?
No, the internal one, it's not comparison with other people. It's how well am I doing compared to myself? Am I continuing to get better? If I'm just better than John Doe, who's standing next to me, well, if John Doe's not particularly good, then neither am I. But I've excelled because I'm better than him. I don't like that attitude.
Yeah. Well, like I said in the what do you call it? The clarification, syllabus clarification that I just sent out this week. I wasn't able to do a Hanegoshi period at all until well after Nidan. I just could not get it. And then one day I tried it and I got it. And Seki says, "Ah, Joji, you got it finally." and it's still my worst technique. And for me, it's an extremely difficult technique to do. And I'm sure for some of you, it's an absolute no-brainer, which is great. I mean, it's frustrating when when I taught them, I'd show it to a green belt and they'd get it right away, And so what allows a green belt to get it? And here I am, a fourth or fifth dan, and I can't do it half as well as he does. But that's a different issue. I think we all have that desire to do better, and that's one thing. That's another thing we look at in a candidate for black belt. How about being self-directed? And someone mentioned this in terms of learning a different martial art or different style of the same martial art. And there's going to be an issue here, but Dave, no sound.
I'm the one who brought up the study of another martial art. It's a great way to build perspective, and it's also a great way to deal with whatever deficit the specific martial art you achieved your first black belt. So in the process of earning a karate black belt that had some interesting mixtures of 3 different kinds of karate and good old-fashioned American boxing, I got fascinated with this book I found at Barnes & Noble, written by George Kirby. And one thing led to another. I mentioned to my karate sensei, and he says, "Oh, I've heard of that guy." And then it must have been 5 or 6 months later, he says, "Dave, I have an idea. Let's earn our black belts in jiu-jitsu." I said, "Great idea." Glad you thought of it. Anyways, what drew me to the jiu-jitsu was it had a lot of techniques that were not included in my karate training, and I could broaden my knowledge. And the whole point here is you can build character, you can instill character, you can with the study of virtually any martial art if it's well taught. But if you want to defend yourself, don't limit yourself.
Okay. One of the problems, and I hate to refer to Seki again, but he was very blunt on a lot of things, which really kept things simple. Because he'd occasionally have a student come in and they'd be doing something from another martial art, and he'd simply say, "Whatever other martial art you have learned stops at the door." That door was famous for a lot of things. But he said, "That stops at the door because I'm teaching jujitsu, and that's what will be practiced in this dojo." And while I was studying with Seki, I also spent some time with Sensei Hal Brocious, who taught Kitsugo Jiu-Jitsu, which kind of filled in some blanks that Seki, like you said, you just want to see what else is out there sometimes. And the Kitsugo is, and actually there are like 3 or 4 different, and they're distinct kinds of Kitsugo in the United States. I don't know how one term got used for so many distinctly different variations of the art. But he did fill in some blank spots, and he did teach some, for lack of a better phrase, dirty fighting. I mean, everything from innocuous is sticking your finger up an attacker's nose and turning it. Or in their ear and turning it, which is more annoying than anything else. But all the way to for women, if they're they're in the process of being raped, how to rip a guy's lips or cheeks. Which then he would say, well, now you're the Joker. But he filled in some spaces, and that's sometimes where we go out and, okay, what does this art have to teach? Or simply having done some summer camps that where Professor Wally J was at, I picked up some ideas from him that fed into Budoshin Jujitsu, which is why I tend to do techniques in a lot tighter than Seki used to do them. But I understand why Seki taught things in bigger circles. So we do tend to sometimes go out and learn other things. But I uphold the whatever you've learned elsewhere stops at the door. And I've lost some top black belts because of that, because they couldn't do that, or wouldn't do that. I'll put it that way. And both sensei knew that I was, Seki knew I was taking instruction from Hal Grotius. Grotius knew I was taking instruction from Seki, and they both had the same policy that it stops at the door. And I respected that because I valued what I was learning from both. And that's a hard thing for some people to do. I had a few years back had a student who showed up. And he showed up for about 6 weeks. Every week he had a different kind of karate uniform on. And it got to be a costume show. And white belts, I usually don't care what they wear. But I finally said to him, I said, pick one. And I said, you're not here to be a show. You're here to learn. Pick one uniform that you can, work in until you get your judo gi, which you're going to have to get before you test anyway. And be consistent. And he didn't come anymore after that. I don't know what I still to this day do not know why he was there. Except maybe to impress other new students. But I look to see if the person is self-directed. Are they willing to ask questions about techniques? Are they willing to say, can this be done this way? Or, I saw so-and-so in another dojo teach this way, or if they're asking questions, that's not necessary. If they're asking questions and maybe challenging your thinking and what you teach, there's not necessarily anything wrong with it. It goes back to respect and how they're asking the questions and what their attitude is. And it's the same thing with parent and child, or teacher and student. And some classroom teachers I hate to say it, some classroom teachers are just they consider that the student's challenging my authority. And there's a difference between challenging your thinking and challenging your authority. And parents have a tough time with that too, as kids become teenagers. So, the question is, what are we looking at in terms of a self-directed student? Go ahead, Jim, say it.
Well, it's Thomas and I are sitting here and we're kind of looking at each other because we've been through this to a point. And Thomas has been with me 6 years, and he's one of the most humble guys. But what I'm trying to say is that Uh, sometimes we've had this situation where a student is studying with us, and that same student is studying with one or two other teachers even. And when they get to the class, you may be teaching a technique, and our background is Kempo. I have no black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. That's why I'm going to train under Professor Kirby here. But Kaji Kempo was where we came from. I guess what I'm trying to say is that they right away, if you show a technique, this person would interject what he's picked up last Tuesday night somewhere. And I would have to say, well, that's not exactly what we're teaching here. So, and you get into a situation there. In other words, how the heck can I put it? There has to be a line. In other words, when we're teaching something, we expect the student to learn that lesson that we're trying to get across in that technique or principle. And I think that when a person learns our basic system, and it's okay to study another system, and I like the phrase, well, look for commonalities rather than differences, because all of these arts, Kempo, Jujitsu, Karate, they all have things in common. And that's much more important than the things that divide us, really. But maybe I'm just not communicating it well enough. I've been through that situation, and it can really, really get tiring when time after time the student is coming back and interjecting something completely different. And he's missing the principles of what you're trying to teach. It's one thing you do an ideal technique, and this is the ideal. It's not going to happen this way on the street. But if you don't get the principles down, then you never really go anywhere with it. So I think what I'm saying is I need some help too in this understanding, on how you handle it. How do you handle it? I'd really like to know how some of you folks handle it.
I'd like to weigh in on that, if I may.
Yes, sir.
On my jujitsu, there's a large combat sport aspect of what I do. It's not everything I do. I want my combat sport expression to reflect the self-defense aspects and strategies of what the original intent of my lineage of jujitsu taught. So because there's a combat sport aspect to it, when I get students from other dojos, they have methods of performing an armbar or a throw or a guard pass or a position escape that are technically sound, but it doesn't fit into the framework that I have mapped out. It's like a gear cog that doesn't fit into the system of techniques that I have mapped out for them that I'm trying to teach and give to them. So I do my best to explain to them that, listen, while that is a valid technique, it might not fit into the strategy that I have prepared to give to you. And while you're here, you're a student of the jujitsu that I'm attempting to give to you. Now, I can't give you somebody else's jujitsu. You're here to learn the jujitsu that I have to offer. And that's how I've handled that in the past. I don't know if that's parallel to some of the stuff that y'all have experienced.
Thank you, Kristen. That's a big help to me, really.
Yeah, I think what Kristen is saying, and there's a lot of logic to it. I can't keep you from learning something else, but this is what I'm trying to teach here. And if you open your mind to it, you'll get a better understanding of what I'm trying to teach. That in a street situation, I can't control what you do, nor do I have an intent to, but because you ultimately do, or without considering Mushin, you ultimately do what you're trained to do. And I'd like to help you in that training. And I think unless I'm wrong, I think that's what Bristol is saying, is that, if you keep your mind open to what I'm teaching, you might gain something from it that not only will help you learn my style of jujitsu, but may also help you down the road with your, whatever else you've learned. And I think what works for Briston in Briston's explanation is that he's doing his best to keep it positive.
Right.
Yeah, Sensei, when you say that, I agree what you're getting at with what Briston said. And I apologize for being late to everyone. So good morning to everybody.
Wonderful.
But I think he has a great perspective on it. I think Briston is extending the courtesy to say, look, this is what we're doing in this class. This is what you really kind of need to be paying attention to in a respectful way, so that person gains respect for him, but ultimately saying at the same time, look, I understand that you have different ways, different scenarios, different approaches, and may have seen different things in other systems. However, this is what we're doing now. And you say that yourself a bunch, Sensei, whether it was Seki having his method that may have been a little bit more harsh and saying, look, if you're not going to do that because you didn't leave it at the door, you can go right back out the same door you came in, right? And so I think Briston was kind of giving him a little bit more liberty to say, look, here's what we're doing in this class out of respect and courtesy, without saying it. Have that respect for the class that we're conducting right now. This is what you're going to get out of it.
Right.
Take it down.
And it's
Yeah, great.
How do you say it? I think as a sensei, and I even did it took me a few years to get as a classroom teacher. You have to extend, if you want respect from your students, you have to extend respect to them. And if they see you respect them, and as Brissa said, where they're coming from, they're more willing to work with you and respect you, because you may not agree with everything they say, but you accept it. And that is probably the key to more effective learning. Is, Brissa says, fine, you learn this here, hunky-dory. I'm not putting it. Hunky-dory is a diminutive term. I don't want to use that. Yeah. You learn this, and it's okay for that situation. But now you're here. You're in my classroom, in my dojo. This is what I'm trying to get you to learn and understand. And you're going to do with it whatever you want, ultimately.
I think, Sensei, you can have the same challenges even within your own class.
Right.
Even if somebody doesn't come out, into the class from a different system, you can have people that just on the mat that would say, I'm not really sure about this. Maybe it's this, right? And they start to sidetrack the class, and it becomes disruptive because, again, another thing that Briston had mentioned was the fact that, look, I'm using this scenario. There's a million other ways that you can apply it. There's a million other ways that you can do something, but this is the scenario that we're working on right now. This is the application of the technique that we're demonstrating right now, in an effort for you to learn the basics or the fundamentals of whatever technique you're working on. I understand that there's many other ways of doing it, but right now, this is where we are. This is what I need you to kind of pay attention to. But that also, that same challenge can come from right across the mat. It can come from somebody that's already in the class, and you have to have that same type of a discussion.
Yeah.
Right. And there's technique chains that we've developed that might, if you're doing a different, like I'm going to use an arm bar because there's a million ways to do an arm bar, right? So if I'm teaching a technique chain from a specific entrance into an arm bar, and the student wants to do it his way, well, the whole thing's going to unravel. Because we've got, if this, then this mapped out, if this, then this. So I guess that's what I was trying to.
No, I love that you said that, Briston, because that's exactly what I talk about in the class. Even advanced students in my classes, if they're like, if they're working with somebody else and I'm across the other side of the mat, and then I come back and they're like, oh yeah, we went on to this. They don't know what, in my mind, leading the class as the sensei was going to do next. They have no clue in their mind. They're just like, okay, we're going to deviate now. And I'm like, no, you're missing everything. You're missing the entire next step. Now you can't get to the next step. And the person who doesn't, that really is the one that gets the worst end of the stick, is the person that's working with that individual that maybe they had confidence in, that's more experienced, because now they're totally confused, because you have to bring it all the way back to square one to get to, or step one to get to step two in what you were doing in that particular class. They messed up everything. You don't say it that way, you don't articulate it that way or communicate it that way, but in your mind, you're like, yeah, now I need to start over, and both of you should be on the same path of what we're working on a class collectively together. We're going to go to step two next. Just have a little patience.
Or trust
Yes.
that I have a plan.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
One thing that Seki would do was he taught a number of, I won't even say techniques, he taught a number of moves which independently and in their own, just by themselves, seemed totally useless. For example, he would have us he'd put out 3 rows of dollar bills on the mat. Now it's a huge wrestling mat. And he'd say that someone's going to grab your wrist and I want you to pick up the dollar bill. Now, why he used a dollar bill was an incentive to pick up the money. But his reasoning was I want you not to think about the person who's grabbing your forearm, but just reaching for the dollar bill. Because the person who's grabbing your forearm is a hindrance to you straightening out your arm as you step forward. And most students initially, and my students would do it too, would say, this is stupid. I mean, they wouldn't say this is stupid, but this doesn't do anything. But the point is, it gets you to find a person grabbed your arm, just going to reach. You don't say, oh, they're grabbing my arm, I can't straighten my arm because they're grabbing it. The only thing I found different is that when I've done it with my students in probably for the past 10, 15 years, I've had to use $5 and $10 bills rather than $1 bills.
That's called inflation.
Inflation.
That's great.
It's I mean, it's really, how do you say, stupid, some of the modifications you have to keep up with technology. Okay. How many of us have dealt with if you're talking on your smartphone and someone grabs you from behind and they clench around you and you drop your smartphone, what is the thing most people will try to do?
Pick it up.
They want to go pick it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's nothing wrong with that concept. Okay, except if you just if the person grabs around you and you can get one hand on one of their forearms and just drop down to your knee, one knee on the side of the arm you've grabbed, and turn in the other direction, you've done a drop throw. And they don't think of that. So sometimes you just have to keep up. You have to deal with, what attacks are there out there today. I mean, if you had a landline, someone grabbed and, with a cord, and, Hal Brocious used to teach how to defend yourself in a phone booth. Well, there's no phone booths anymore, but the cord, he used to teach how to defend, use that cord on the phone, even when they had the pods, without the phone booth. I don't know how many of you remember those.
Nope.
It'd say phone on the side. I mean, the phone, it's something about yay high and about yay wide, had a phone in it, and pay phone in it. And you could still defend yourself by taking the phone and wrapping the cord around their neck once. Then the phone company shortened the cord. about that long. He says, now we're stuck. We can't use the phone anymore. Anyway,
Sensei, the phone booth is subjective, right? We're still in a phone booth, right? Depends on where you are. What if you're in a
yeah,
bus? It's
right.
kind of a phone booth, right?
Yeah,
And the cord still may be there because nowadays people are on their cell phone, their mobile device, so often that they're carrying around, a mobile charger, which is attached to a cord. How about use that same cord? That's still attached to something,
Yeah.
right? It's all subjective to what it is now.
Yeah.
Technology has evolved, but yeah, it's still there.
yeah, you just had, it's you have to, I don't know how you say it. You have to, you to an extent you have to stick with what's going on today. I mean, yes, it's okay to, it's okay to practice with katana or jute or any other martial arts tools that were used 400 or 500 years ago, if you want to learn that. And that also teaches you some very important concepts on how to move your body, empty hand, things of that sort. But as a sensei, and we really got sidetracked here, is you have to keep, just reaching for that dollar bill is what you're supposed to do. Because there are techniques, particularly in Aikido, where if someone grabs your wrist, your first move is probably just going to be to reach out and move your feet so you're balanced, to off balance them so that you can do whatever other technique you plan to do. Okay. And until students see that and maybe practice it, then they get the rationale of this stupid, worthless move of reaching for the $5 bill. Okay. And somehow reaching for the $5 or $10 bill makes it easier to learn the technique than just say, oh, just reach out in front of you into the ground. Okay. And yes, I don't want to say it bastardizes the technique somewhat, or it's a stupid prop to use, but it's amazing. I mean, and you're all, I'm sure most of you have sensei have you sometimes used some really stupid props to get students to do things. And to do,
It's just what they relate to, right, Sensei?
it's what they relate to. And sometimes using something really stupid works amazingly well because they can see through the humor.
I had a sensei in jujitsu, Sensei Ron Thomas from the West Coast Jiu-Jitsu Club, and he'd have me to teach dashi barai. He would have me sweep a sheet of paper across the mat, up and down the mat, just with my foot. Just kind of brush the sheet of paper all the way down the mat, turn around, and go all the way back.
Right. And if you're, I would say to my kids, you're on a skateboard. How do you move the skateboard forward? You sweep with the other foot, and sometimes you have to come up with really stupid analogies to get the students to understand a really simple concept.
It's amazing how we're all just, like they say, 6 degrees apart, right? I mean, we do the same thing here. Our concept in New Orleans would be everyone is relatable to, in a scramble in a Mardi Gras scenario, picking up the balloons. That's like a little coin that, they're worth nothing. They throw them out, but everybody acts like they're gold coins all over the ground and they're scrambling to get them. And if you're going after one of those things, that's how we would ask some people to do techniques in class. Go after it like you're going after the balloon.
Yeah.
It's the same difference. Everybody has different things, but it's weird how we're all connected.
Yeah, it's and maybe the concept for senseis and teachers is you don't always have to. You can teach a very serious technique or movement with a good sense of humor, and students will. It's amazing. Students will pick up on something a lot faster if you have a good sense of humor than if you are overkill serious.
It opens up learning channels, Sensei.
What?
It opens up learning channels.
Yes, I mean, there are some things I am deadly serious on, some submissions, because I had a black belt once. I was doing a sternum press submission, and I told the black belt, and what the submission is basically, after you've thrown this person, you're grabbing on their lapels, your kneecap basically goes on their sternum, and what you would do for a submission is drop your weight on the sternum as you quickly pull up on the gi lapels, and that will crack their sternum, which is a very minor injury. It's just a person, paramedics, anyway. So you tell the student, lie completely still, because this is not a situation where the person doing the technique is not balanced, because you're on one foot and one kneecap, not the whole knee, just the kneecap. And he, of course, wanted to find out what would happen if he tried to turn one way or another, and he did. And I lost my balance. He was very apologetic afterwards, and the paramedics took him away. And it cracked his sternum. And they took him to the hospital, and they don't wrap people anymore for that. And the doctor just said, try not to breathe for the next 4 to 6 weeks. But it's there are submissions you do where if the person resists, and you all know this, or if they resist a particular technique, they are going to get injured. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And those are things I am very serious with my students about, because I don't like to see my students get injured. But you can have, as a sensei, you can have a good sense of humor. I mean, there are times when in a classroom where I've blown a lesson. And I can't repeat it online, but if you ask me after, I can really humorous incident my first year of teaching. And I thought if any of this gets to the principal, I am out as a teacher for what I said. It ended up the kids never sent in. These are senior kids, 12th graders. And I used a quote unquote a word in an inappropriate way. And they had a great laugh. We couldn't continue class after that, but you got a good laugh out of it. If you ask me afterwards, after I can tell you. And but anyway, so a sense of humor does help. And we were on self-directed, and somehow we got sidetracked here into senseis and having a sense of humor.
Sensei, a sense of humor goes straight to enthusiasm.
Yes.
Which is what we were earlier.
Yes.
Demonstrated enthusiasm.
Yeah, they're so close, they're so related to each other.
Yeah.
It's my first year of teaching junior high, our department chair was, I may have said this before, his name was Daniel Boone, and he was related. He stood maybe 5'2", 5'4", short guy. And I said, how do you deal? And I had a really rotten first semester with 7th graders. I couldn't get my language down to their level. I went to the principal and I said, here's the problem. He says, would you take 8th graders? Because most teachers detest 8th graders. And I said, I'll try them. Now, Daniel Boone loved 8th graders. And I went to him and I said, how do you deal with it? He says, the key is to act a little crazier than they are, and they calm down. And that became my teaching mantra for the rest of my teaching career, would just be a little crazier than the students. And I'm not saying you should do that on the mat every day, because people are going to wonder about you, but having a sense of humor, as Dave said, it's so important. That's your enthusiasm. And that you can laugh at yourself when you make a mistake. So in any case, let's go on here. Contributing to the martial arts community. What if you're looking at a person for black belt, what are you, what are you, uh, okay. Oh, soccer is more important than jujitsu? Oh, I'm heartbroken. I'm gonna have a heart attack. Oh no. Did you know that soccer teaches you how to do better at jujitsu? So you gotta tell your son he's actually learning jujitsu.
Excuse me.
He's learning Ashi Sabaki.
I didn't know.
You know what Ashi Sabaki is?
Ashi is foot. Sabaki is movement.
Right.
Foot movement.
Yeah. So don't you learn that in soccer?
Yeah, of course.
Of course, I was learning jujitsu.
Yeah.
Let him
I
mess.
gotta go, fellas.
Yeah, take
Thank you.
care. Let him mess
Thank
up.
you,
Let him mess up let him mess up the soccer coach.
I'll take care.
Okay. In another just a quickie here, and we'll get back to this. When I was a union rep at the junior high, principal would have staff meetings at once a month, and I'd be involved in those. And sometimes he was really wordy, like I am at times. And he finished what he was saying, and he says, "Does anyone have any comment?" And I said, "Well, I said, I appreciate what you said, but it's really insegrevious to the issue here." 2 days later, he calls me into his office, and he was a big Irish guy, and he chews me out. It took him 2 days, not because I said the word insegrevious, which means what you said is so unimportant and irrelevant that it's not worth mentioning. It's a real put down word. He said, but it took me 2 days to find out what it meant. He says, that's why I'm ticked off at you. So, so if Christian's son now asks his soccer coach when they're dealing with kicking the soccer ball, Ashi Sabaki. That coach is going to get frustrated because the kids will pick up on the word, and the teacher will find out, the coach will find out he has to figure out what the word means. Anyway, but anyway, moving right along. Okay, contributing to the martial arts community. You've got to get serious here for a moment. What now is the martial arts community, we're talking about a student here. He may be an adult, he may be a kid. Okay, kid meaning 16, 17, under 20. If we're saying martial arts community, are we talking about inside the dojo or outside the dojo? Because I think we need to specify this.
Well, if I may, I think it starts in the dojo. And then those attributes, I would like to think that, well, here's kind of the way I look at things, and maybe this will connect to that. My family life, my business life, my dojo life, they all have to be similar. Whatever principles I follow in one, I follow in the other. And so I may start by developing certain things that will contribute to the community later, and I'll learn them in the dojo, but they should be transparent, I think. I don't mean the exact skills, I mean the other things that I learned in the dojo.
Okay, anybody else want to?
For Q ranks, I found it was difficult to provide opportunities outside the dojo, other than we went to training sessions, or when you came to teach. And I would encourage my students, make sure that you are participating with students outside of our dojo. So be somebody else's uke, and extend yourself out there and get to know them. Though there weren't a lot of opportunities, but that was the time when I said, you don't work with the people you already work with, because you've lost something if you do that.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Yeah, there are ways where you can get your brown belts, because they should be assuming some responsibilities, because your ideal goal is that someday they will become a sensei. I mean, that's always my ideal goal. They don't always get there. I mean, in terms of they don't become astral. They may become black belts, but they don't always become sensei. There's a difference. Um, um, there are things they can do in the dojo. If they can work with other students, if there's a seminar, they can help get the class lined up, which eventually they won't have to do because the students will know how to line up without their direction. They might, we take attendance for insurance purposes, but we try and do it when they check in and give that responsibility to an upper belt. And obviously you need to check it over. It could be making sure the mats are put away correctly. There are a lot of what seemingly little things, and it doesn't mean and the trick is to get them to learn how to do this without being bossy or annoying. Which means if they do say the mats need to be put away correctly, they might have one or two students at their mats say, "Can you help me straighten these mats out?" It doesn't mean you two straighten the mats out. And this is it's a skill to help people learn how to do something without saying just do this. There may be other things in your dojo that like Dave used it. Some other dojos have what are called crash pads for, like if you're doing ukiyo-toshi or tomonagi, or sometimes to help, particularly to help students who are adults beyond a certain age, so they have a softer landing when they're thrown. And rather than an upper belt saying to a lower belt, go get a couple crash pads, it would be, can you help me with a couple get the crash pad out. It's not what they do, it's how they do it. And that's your responsibility as a sensei, to help them learn how to do that. Now, that may be the martial arts community they're dealing with below brown belt, unless they're a really capable adult, and you can get them to do stuff outside the dojo as well. Or dealing with I'd love to have an adult who could deal with publicity for the dojo. How many of you have tried to put articles in newspapers?
Doing it right now.
And now some communities it's easier than others. I'll do it once in a while. Unfortunately, with the city of Santa Clarita, they have to approve everything I want to send out. And that's just the way it is. You can say, I'm not happy with it, but that's the way it is. But I know when I worked at the city of Burbank, they said, "Oh yeah, go ahead, do it." But you'll find, I found that they'd include an article on Budoshin Jujitsu, or classes are about to begin, or something like that, only if there was space in the newspaper for it. It's kind of like, this is the last thing we will consider putting in the paper, because there's other real stuff going on. So and that's that's another reality. It's not, they're not personally antagonistic towards you. It's just, that's a reality of news. the news media will present what they believe the community wants to hear. Whether it be liberal or conservative, but that's a whole nother ballgame. But so the question is, how do you have any of you found any ways to get other ways to get students more involved in contributing to the martial arts community, whatever that is? Okay, we'll move on.
Well, I'm not sure if this qualifies, but when I'm doing the Art and Chaos course for the general public every 6 months to a year, I will encourage students in my dojo to participate, come help out, because those classes are larger and it helps me a lot. And it also helps the participants a lot to have some experienced judoka or jujitsu students to assist. And it's especially nice if you got both genders, because some people are just more comfortable working with one gender or the other. So I've got a black belt coming to the October 26th seminar who's a lady black belt. And so that's by design, because some of the people coming on October 26th just going to be a lot more comfortable working with ladies. Anyways, that said, does that fit the criteria you're talking about? Because what I'm doing with that is an outreach that allows me then to not just reach the general public and make people feel genuinely safer, but also some of those people want to come study.
Okay.
And the students are helping out. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think, and I think what you're saying here is, if you can, the more you can involve the students in the program beyond just learning techniques, the more they will feel part of the program, and hopefully they will be more inclined to contribute to the program in the future.
One of the things that we do, Sensei, to help, I think it kind of all ties into the advertisement, promoting, marketing, whatever you're trying to do to help the class get more engagement, more participation, for the public to be aware of it, who knows about it, what's going on with it, those type of things. It's very simple, and it doesn't matter where you put it, whether it's the newspaper, a publication, nowadays, social media, there's all kind of platforms that you can put it on. It's just take a picture of the class. Everyone wants a copy of the picture. Everyone wants to do something with the picture, and every one person that does something with that one picture that you've taken goes somewhere else, that leads somewhere else, that leads somewhere else. So the exposure and the gravity that you get just out of one single picture, just because you took one in a class, or if it was a clinic, a seminar, or something like that, the exposure you get out of it is just, it's priceless in everything that you do. So you get a tremendous amount of value out of just taking one picture, in addition to the memories that you have with it.
Right. It's, yes, a picture is worth 1,000 words, as someone once said. And I just got an email this week from a student I had at the junior high in 1974. He's like in his 60s now. And he said, I remember the class. He says, and I got so much out of it. He said, unfortunately, I got in trouble in the 9th grade year, and I got kicked out of Olive Vista, which was the junior high I was teaching at, which also was referred to as Olive View Junior High. And about a block away, there was the Olive View Mental Health Center. It's a county facility. But even the administrators, we were referred to as Olive View everyone would just smile and say, "That's right," because in my book, that's what junior high schools are. They're mental facilities. But anyway, you if you can get pictures, even if it's with you and a single student, it means so much to them. And yeah, get a class picture every once in a while. It's so important, and you got to do that if you have black belts. Every once in a while, once a year, or anything major happens, got to line up your black belts. Everybody take a picture of the black belts. It's amazing. It's great PR. You can't buy public relations like that.
Darren, I'm glad you brought this up because just yesterday, the reporter that called to interview me for the article they're going to put in the paper. By the way, you got to make sure you meet print deadlines. So you want to do this 6 weeks in advance, or at least a month in advance if you can. The reporter, the first thing that person asked for is pictures, and I said specifics you want. She said, would you send me pictures from the video stream of last year's class? I said, sure. So Darren, you're in several of them.
Congratulations, Darren.
I'm gonna thank you for being the influencer that you are. I don't know. I mean, I sent 7 or 8 pictures. I don't know which they're going to use, and if they're going to use more than one. But anyways, I was happy they asked, and it didn't occur to me, and that's why they're reporters and I'm not. But anyways, if you're doing digital newspaper, deadlines aren't so important. If you're doing blasts, like email blasts, again, deadlines aren't so important. But anyways, I just thought you'd like to know, Darren, that you brought up pictures. I'd say the 3 of the ones I sent had you in them. Yeah,
That's good. I'll take it. Thank you. It's an honor for sure.
If they end up using those, I'll be sure to send them your way.
Thank you. I'd love them.
Digitally, unless you want hard copy.
No, digital's fine. I'll take the digital. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Okay, moving right along here. Another thing you look at for second here. Yeah, we're getting close to the end here. Is respected by peers. Is the brown belt, or this candidate for black, is he respected by other students in the class? And how do you sense that?
Of course they are, sensei. I think so. I think that other students, especially beginners with no experience, absolutely, they're inspired by those intermediate and advanced ranking students. They look up to them. They want to be able to do the things that they do. They want to be the person that they are. They want to try the things that they're demonstrating or whatever. I think that's an absolute inspiration for them.
Okay, anybody else?
Tell when they're not respected, because students are going to tell you they respect somebody else in the class. How do you know that a student is not respected? Because they're not as likely to tell you unless they say, I just don't want to work with that person. Other than that, how do you know?
That is true. That does happen, Thomas. I'm sure everybody here has had a couple of people approach them. It doesn't happen often, but I've had some people that may or may not have appreciated, let's say, for just the lack of respect for an individual that came and said, look, I'm not comfortable working with this individual, or I don't care to work with this individual because of either a misunderstanding or another reason. It's not all the time that you can identify it. Most cases, hopefully for me, at least people have approached me with it and said, hey, I have this concern or this question, or I'm not really comfortable working here. It's not often. It's very, very rare, but it does happen.
Yeah, it's yes, you do occasionally get I mean, and I had, we had it happen once with a couple, probably about a year ago now, or 2 years ago, with a student that a number of people in the class simply did not want to work out with them because that person wasn't, how do you say, being respectful of the art. And if you can, if sometimes you can pick up when there is a problem, which was one reason why I finally wrote that, we call it syllabus clarification, which got mailed out this week. Was because one of my advanced students actually called me up and said, there's an issue in our dojo. And it actually was an unfounded issue, and I'm hoping that that 3-page epic resolved it. But it's, to me, it is good when students will come to the sensei and say, there's a problem, or are you aware of this, or something like that, because as sensei, we are not necessarily aware necessarily some of the subtle things that go on between students. And you really, as a teacher and a sensei or parent, you have to be aware of these things, and you have to take care of them in the most tactful manner possible. And handling it in a tactful manner possible is really the hard part. And I have been dealing with this particular issue for a number of years from various sources, not just the park dojo.
I think as sensei, we try to eliminate as much of that as we possibly can, so
Yes.
it doesn't happen, right? We have dojo etiquette, and we check off those boxes so those things don't happen. What if somebody doesn't have the proper hygiene, right? And then somebody doesn't respect them because they don't smell good when they're working out with them, right? Or their hands are dirty or something like that, or feet are dirty or something like that. Or maybe they're not appreciating or understanding of what the art is, where the art came from, what are you doing with the art, what its primary resolve is. Yeah, somebody may not be comfortable with that. What are they going to use it for? You have those issues, or I can go on. I mean, but that's why you have, like I said, you have a syllabus, you have a program, you have dojo etiquette, and you have respect. And so when you're looking at all of those things, do things fall between the cracks? They do. And then at that point, when it's brought to your attention, if you don't recognize it yourself and someone else does, they bring it to your attention, then you have to figure out what was missed. Is they're not doing something within the system or the dojo etiquette piece, or is it just way off track? What did I miss with not being able to identify it myself? And so you have those challenges, and again, we try to reduce that to where it doesn't happen, but it does. It happens, and hopefully it doesn't happen often. And at least for me, it hasn't happened often, but it still does happen periodically. And that's just things that in your everyday learning yourself on how to approach things and what you may have missed in your own development.
Right. It's you do as much as you can to prevent problems, but sometimes they do crop up. And then you have to find as I said before, the most tactful way of dealing with them. And sometimes, unfortunately, as it happened with this one person that was in our park class, I ultimately had to email and say, you probably need to find another martial arts class. And it wasn't put in that blunt of a term, but that's basically what was said. Because they just wouldn't. They wouldn't. They wouldn't change their behavior or attitude. And in essence, then they became essentially a safety hazard. And so in any case, you try and prevent these problems you want to see all your students respected by each other. And obviously you want them to respect you. But as I said, I earned early on in my teaching career that if you want respect from your students, or if you want respect from anyone, you have to show them respect first. So I just do that as a matter of, that's who I am, because it's just, you find that, you don't get, I'm not going to deal with this person because they didn't take a shower last night, or, or something, some people come up with all sorts of reasons, but you have to treat people with courtesy and respect, and it usually is returned. I won't say always, but it usually is returned. Anyway, I think we're going to follow the Mellarine code, and I just thought of that right now. And we're going to end the meeting this time. I want to thank all of you for being here.
Thank you.
Encourage some other black belts to get back on, because of the more the merrier. I know this topic has not been an easy topic to deal with. There are just a couple of, and some of these are getting to be pretty redundant in terms of subjective criteria. So I'm hoping that next time we can summarize this and bring this topic to a close. And there's more stuff here. Sensei's responsibility, subjective criteria.
Yeah, we got a lot left on your outline.
What? This really got to be a massive topic, much greater than I was expecting.
Yeah, that word subjective gets us in trouble, Sensei.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know that. I know
Objective is straight up. There it is.
Yeah, subjective.
Subjective. We go all over the place.
Yep.
And that's how you say when I was probably said that years ago, I used to ask when I first started teaching, I used to ask my students, why did you do something? And you never get a good answer until I ran into the counselor who said, you never ask people why they did something. You ask them what were their reasons. And what are your reasons is objective. Why is subjective. And this is the same thing. It's if you ask a person why, there really is no good answer. There rarely is a good answer to a why question. So in any case, so we're going to end at this point. I want to thank all of you for joining us. The next meeting conference is going to be on October 5th. Dave will be a little more frazzled because he's getting ready for October 6th.
Sensei,
Yes.
That would be,
I'm sorry, Dave.
it'd be October 26th.
Or 26th, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I'll still be out of town that week. So
Okay.
I'll be unfrazzled.
Be unfrazzled. Okay.
Sensei,
Yes.
I just want to thank you for the invitation. I know it's been kind of a long drink of water getting me over here. And for all of my friends here, thank you so much, guys, professors, senseis, Darren, Dave, Thomas, Johnny. Who'd I miss? Everyone. It was really wonderful to be here. I'm deeply humbled by the opportunity. Thank you so much, Thomas.
And we appreciate your contribution.
Yes.
James.
Thank you, sir.
And come back next
We
time.
will. I
Yeah.
will.
Yeah,
We will, for
it's-
sure.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Okay.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Okay, so I'm going to end the recording, and then if you want to hear, for those of you if anyone sticks around, I'll give you a really stupid story that I thought was going to get me fired from the teaching profession. Okay, so anyway, have a great weekend. Take care.
Take care.
Too dangerous.
All the best.